your mind
I know the
together.
experience, obviously a lot going on in the country, but we're going to focus on what is happening right here in Massachusetts, and we're going to do that for the entire half hour with Senator Mike Moore and Senator Harriette Chandler. And thank you both for coming today, and we'll talk about some of the issues that are out there. Let me start statewide, one that made a lot of headlines, and Senator Moore, I'll start with you, and that is about the pay raise that was voted by the legislature. But I think that if we look at the headline, there's a lot of people who go pay raise voted by the legislature. People have a visceral reaction to that of no. If you could you please explain how it is that the legislature for many years got paid? In other words, you get your salary the way that I do, the way that anybody else does. You also, though, would get, you're the chairman of right, so you get a separate check for that?
Stipend.
It's built. You get
so
a separate.
explain
You get it. Well, we get our base salary, which we do not give ourselves pay raises on the base salary. I think if everyone goes back to the beginning of January when the governor started this session off, he looked at the cost of the median family income, and based on that, you determine what the legislators' salaries are. Now, I think it was under Patrick. I think it was 4 years ago or 5 years ago. We actually took a cut in our salary.
We've done it twice.
We've done it twice. We've gotten cuts in our salary. So that's separate. So that's our salary.
So
then
I just want to stay with that for a second. So it can go up or it can go down.
And that's based on the governor's recommendation.
Right.
The legislature has nothing to do with that. Then you have the stipends. You have, as the chairman of the higher education, I get a $7,500 stipend for the extra work doing that.
Right.
Now, some committees have a $7,500 stipend. Some have a $15,000 stipend.
Is that for being the chair of the committee,
That's
$7,500,
yeah.
or just being on the committee?
No, just the chair.
Just the chair. Right. Okay.
So the committee members don't get a stipend for that. It's just the chairman do
Right.
for all the added extra work they do.
Right.
Now, some committees get a $7,500, and then some get a $15,000 stipend. Then now, if you're in leadership, which would be vice chair of Senate Ways and Means,
Vice chair, the chair of Ways and Means,
and up, get extra,
and up.
get a larger stipend as for holding that position. So
Senate president.
right, Senate
Myself,
president,
yeah.
the
Majority leader.
Yeah.
President pro tem,
The whip, the assistant whip.
Right.
And now you have to look at on the Senate side, on the House and the Senate, then the minority party also has the same structure. So even though you've got the minority leader, who would be like the majority leader, then you've got his assistants down to the whip. Now, even though they don't have anyone to whip, they've got a whip and assistant whip.
Right.
That person gets a substantial stipend for that. So what they talked about now, these rates for these stipends were established back in 1982. So roughly 30 years ago. They haven't been increased.
So 30 years ago, $7,500 and
Was a significant.
It was a significant amount. It's still pretty good,
Yes.
but obviously 30 years of inflation and everything else. Why wouldn't it have changed in the 30 years? Because you have to vote on it yourself, and usually politically, it's hard to vote a pay raise.
Pretty much, no matter
Yeah.
look, no matter what you vote on, no matter what you're voting on based on a salary increase, voters will complain that they don't get to give themselves pay raises, and the legislature
Right.
shouldn't do that.
Following on what Senator Moore said, I was there between 1995 and 1999 when the Speaker of the House, Tom Finneran, tied the pay raise now,
Yeah.
to the cost of living.
This isn't the stipend.
This isn't the stipend.
Right.
This is the so
that
that was
was-
hard enough in
Wasn't
itself.
but that was done by a voter referendum too.
That was done. It was voted on first by the legislature and then put to a referendum.
I remember that argument, and the argument was I mean, those who were against tying it were saying things like, you should be able to stand up, and I should be able to vote for or against you based on the vote that you take for the pay raise. And those who argued for it, as I recall, were, listen, I mean, this is a lot easier. Obviously, people shouldn't go 30 years without any type of a pay raise.
Right, and it's always hard to vote for a pay raise.
Right.
I mean, there's never a good time for
No.
it. That's
And also, it takes it takes the argument away that we be voting on ourselves a pay raise.
Right.
We should be getting a salary that's representative of the
Yeah,
work
it's
we
interesting
do.
that it actually turns out that it's really harder to vote yourself a pay raise as opposed to the opposite, which is, hey, you know what? I'd like to make more money. Let's vote ourselves a pay raise.
Right.
That doesn't really happen. But this is, again, to get back to this, just so that people understand. So now this is what you voted on now is the stipend, and actually you each voted a different way. I should
Right.
let people know that.
Right.
You voted yes
Right.
to increase
I
the
did.
stipend. You voted no
Yes.
to increase the stipend. Why the yes vote?
Well, perhaps I'm idealistic about this, but I believe that the people who represent the people of Massachusetts are hardworking, good hardworking people who go in every day, and this is not a 5-day-a-week job. This is a 7-day-a-week, 52-week-a-year job. You're on always. You meet people in the grocery store, you meet them at the gas station, and they have an issue, they have a problem. You go to town meetings, you go to everything that there is in your district, and you're expected to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of your job. That's why you do it.
You're out Saturdays, Sundays, nights,
Right.
early morning meetings.
And
Yeah.
people who don't understand that really think of us as just working when we actually vote in a formal session. That's really not true. We're meeting with our constituents. We're part of a committee assignments. We have committees meetings throughout the year, actually, as we meet with the town member, the towns we represent, and we're supposed to be there, and we are there. And what I began to see, and I think a lot of us began to see, is that a lot of good young people they might come and serve a term, but they just could not live on $60,000 plus if they were lucky enough to be a vice chairman, and a freshman is usually not a vice chairman. That's the
Right,
the
you
low-
have to
you'd have to serve some time.
legislature to be able
So let's say
get a position to get the stipend.
they have to live on the 62.5, which
Yeah.
is now what the governor just gave us as a pay raise based on the cost of living. They couldn't do it. One of our colleagues that we both know well has 3 children. And he discovered one day that he got a letter from the principal of his children's elementary school saying that his 3 children, were eligible for free lunch. All right, think about
Wow.
that. Free lunch.
That really says something.
And it really said something to him.
Yeah, I don't know. I was surprised at 62.5 though. Yeah, but yeah, that it does.
You're surprised? Think about
I
it
am,
for
yeah.
a moment.
I mean, Massachusetts is an expensive place to live.
It's an expensive place to live, and if
you're the sole breadwinner.
And if you're the
Right,
sole
right.
breadwinner, then that's what
Yeah,
you have to
yeah.
live on. There's a car involved. There's
Sure.
a home. There's food on the table.
And there's a
there
lot of
are
expenses. To be fair, there's a lot of expenses, as you just pointed out. You're on 24/7. You're also, many of these places where you're going to, people are asking you for donations to help the worthy causes.
Absolutely.
So I know there's a lot
and
of
that's what our
of
campaign
expenses
accounts
as well.
really are for. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how we use them. But for many people, they just can't take a second job. I mean, people say, well, this is only a part-time job. It isn't a part-time job.
Right.
It's a full-time job. It's
And
awfully hard.
if you were a union employee getting paid hourly rates,
Yeah.
the salary would be a lot bigger than
Okay, so you clearly understand then
Oh,
why
I-
the yes
He
vote.
understands.
So
I understand
why
all the
why no
arguments, and I
vote?
think it's just there's justification for it. My issue with voting on this was the perception of the raise when you're doubling it, going from 7,500 to 15,000, going from 15,000 to 30,000.
Yeah.
There was just dramatic jumps.
This is the problem with not having done it since 1982.
Right. So the perception is to the public, it looks like we're getting something that's undeserved, or we're just, the perception is that we're giving us these big salary bonuses.
Right.
But-
Which, again, going back, if
Yeah.
you look 30 years, they should have been raised incrementally.
But they
And
weren't.
the other thing is, we could have, the other option is we could have voted it now and had it go into effect in the next session. So
Yeah.
that's, other than that, again, everything that Senator Chandler said, I wholeheartedly
let me
endorse
quickly,
and
because
support,
we're-
but it's just
Yeah.
the perception of it.
Yeah, and we're certainly well over time on this segment, but let me just ask you both quickly. Have you gotten blowback on this? I mean,
I'd be
it
lying
was
to
pretty
tell
high
you that I
profile.
haven't.
Yeah,
I would be lying to
pretty
tell
high
you that I
profile.
haven't. But I think in most cases it's people who really don't know what we do, don't realize the time and energy that it takes. The fact that they want good people in office, the fact that they don't want just rich people who can afford to live on what they make, or people who are just looking for a starting job so that they can start there and maybe take that and go to the next job. They want people who are good, who can make the policy of their state.
Right.
Well, actually, it just is that, you know, it's nice to have a governor or lieutenant governor that have the wealth, the financial means where they can not take their salaries. But you want a representative government, so that means you need people of all different demographics in there. So you want people who basically are surviving on their salaries.
Right.
They can understand what you're going through. And also the other thing too is there's voting no on the issue, and then there's voting no and not taking the money.
Right.
It's very easy to vote no. Look, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from my vote, but I'm not going to be one of the, I know several people who are voting no, but they're coming back with, well, I can spend the money better than government, so they're going to take it.
Can you even do that?
Yes.
I mean, can
Yes.
you? So you can say no to the increase in the stipend?
Yes.
You can. Oh, okay.
So now, if you're going to vote no, then you don't take it.
Right.
So that's, I think, so I just
You don't
hope-
take the increase. You
don't
take what
ta-
you were getting
Right,
previously.
right.
Yeah.
You know, now there's a different story. Now, say the committee assignments. You could have someone had one. Say I get higher education again, and I keep the 7,500.
Right.
If I were to get another committee chair, you can get a second stipend.
Right.
But again, it should be at the old rate.
Right.
So people have to pay attention to make
Yeah.
sure that you don't get someone who's trying
Because you-
to be politically advantageous about this and
right,
saying,
right,
"Hey, I voted no,"
vote-
but then they're
but
taking
then-
a $30,000 pay increase.
Right.
So.
And that may happen.
That's a good.
That may happen.
We'll point that out if that happens. But we have much more to come and many more issues to get to right here on the Hank Stolz Experience.
There's a fire burning bright in Massachusetts, and there's a house upon a hill.
Welcome to We Hear You, our public service announcement. Today I would like to focus on some winter safety tips for seniors, especially as the lovely New England snow starts to come down. Check in on elderly family and neighbors. Offer to drive if someone must get out. Clear walkways and handrails of any snow and ice. Plan ahead for any emergency power needs for medical equipment. Check supplies of food and emergency items. Check to make sure the space heaters are being used properly. And encourage seniors to stay inside. But most importantly, be a friend. Some seniors can get very isolated, and stormy weather can make it even worse. Thanks for joining us for our We Hear You public service announcement, providing education and information for all of us here in Central Massachusetts.
Hi, I'm Dale LePage.
And I'm Jennifer Ankowiak from Charter TV3's entertainment show, WooTube.
Be sure to tune in to WooTube every month for local music and comedy videos,
That's how it is. With your empty smile and your hungry heart, body and soul.
interviews with local venue owners, and upcoming events in your area.
It's your music and comedy videos, all the events you want to attend, and all the places you want to be.
WooTube.
Local news from Central Massachusetts for Central Massachusetts.
June is when the team can sign players and add coaches.
An overnight fire in Holden destroys a home.
Winter weather continues to hit the area
The
tonight.
Worcester neighborhood woke up to what they call a dangerous situation. Dozens of cars were involved in a pileup.
Reporters in the field. And an in-depth local forecast. Worcester News Tonight on Charter TV3.
In Massachusetts.
Speaking with Senator Moore and Senator Chandler talking about the issues of the day, I want to go national a little bit here because obviously President Donald Trump and some of what is coming out of the White House certainly affects what happens here in Massachusetts. And immigration continues to be a huge issue. Senator Chandler, it was just a couple of weeks ago that in front of City Hall there was a large demonstration by people. There was a growing number of people who hope that Worcester declares itself a sanctuary city. There's a growing number of people who I think say don't because it will affect federal funding. And there's a lot of people who I think probably say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just let Worcester do what Worcester has always done. The police, have a policy, allow them to follow that policy. Had Randy Feldman on last week, who immigration lawyer here in the city of Worcester. He said something that was interesting, and hoping that you might be able to pick up on it. He went to the rally, and he said that he has always been in that part of the crowd that is like, it's not broken, don't fix it. Fine to come out here, fine to make your voice heard. You don't like the Trump administration, you don't like what they're doing. That's fine, but you don't have to fix it. He said he's now come over to this. He wants Worcester to declare itself as a sanctuary city because he feels that there has to be, this standing up to the Trump administration. That the rhetoric is such that the voices have to be a little more strident than perhaps they have been in the past. I'm just kind of curious.
My take on that?
Yeah. I mean, and are you feeling? I know that there are resistance meetings that are happening in Worcester, and I'm sure that you're hearing about.
I am hearing about it, and people are very concerned. People particularly, they're very afraid. Let's go into the sanctuary city issue for a moment. What does it mean to be a sanctuary city? It basically means that they will not get some federal funds. And what are those federal funds? They're Homeland Security funds. Now, isn't that a ridiculous irony? The funds that they will not get are the Homeland Security funds, which protect against all kinds of treasonable or difficult situations. I mean, this makes no sense, really. Worcester has always been a welcoming city. We feel very strongly about this. We have probably among the largest number of immigrants in the state, and we're proud of it. The diversity is something that we are very proud of. We've done it well. I don't know whether we really have to be a sanctuary city to do that. I don't know whether the mayor has to say, come to my office and live in my office to show how much we believe in this. But I think that we do, as citizens, have the right to stand up and say, enough. These are things that we cannot tolerate. We can do that without being a sanctuary city. I don't know how you feel about it, Mike, but I feel very strongly what we've done in the past is we're a city for refugees. We have lots of them. Refugees are different than immigrants. Refugees are people who've come here to escape from something.
This is about as political as it gets. I mean, each side wants to. So I happen to be in the camp of things we're going along fine, and probably Worcester probably is a sanctuary city in all but name. But each side now, I think, because of what is happening in the administration, wants to stake out that territory of you've got to declare one way or the other.
I think this is a good example of, was it Tip O'Neill said all politics is local? Here's as you titled this, a national policy.
But it's local.
But this is local. This is hitting people and that might be neighbors or kids in schools, and I think this is a great example how that ties in. And I'm going to disagree with Randy and probably yourself, where you say it's not broken, so don't fix it. Ask Randy how long it takes for someone to go through the process legally to become a citizen. I think if someone wanted to come here, I think it's anywhere close to 10 years. So if you've got someone who wants to resettle here to the United States and go through the proper channel, and you hear everyone saying, oh, but my parents or someone else might have came here legally. Well, I don't know if there was a 10-year wait when they did that 30, 40 years ago, or if not longer. So you've got that. And as Senator Chandler was saying about, we're very welcoming, I think federally, we're classified as Worcester's a resettlement city.
Yes.
So we have one of the highest, we've got roughly 30,000 Ghanaian, Liberian people living in the city and coming through Essentia and Worcester and all that, coming here as a resettlement city.
Right.
Now, like
but they're all here legally.
They're all here legally.
Yeah. We're all here legally. But again, that's a flow of immigrants coming in. What do you want to call them, refugees, or you want to call them the immigrants coming into this country, and they're being resettled here. The sanctuary city, it's just a designation that people have given themselves.
And it's not even a legal designation.
So I think that
it says something. I mean, I do think that what it says is, right, I mean, I do think, though, that what it says is that as a police force, you're not going to be out. I mean, it's not a papers, please. It's not, I'm going into your neighborhood.
There's no federal classification. This is just the mayor or the area designating it we're a sanctuary city. Now, I will say this, that this whole protest and all this happening, that's really because of the type of campaign that was waged over the last year and a half. It's not because of him coming to office for 18 days and we're doing this. If you look at the rhetoric that has taken place over the last year, you've got people, families and kids that are scared. They're afraid. And now, just on the news today, even though they're threatening to take money away, they're doing these ICE raids and deporting people. Look, criminals should go. They shouldn't be here in the first place. I am all for that. But I mean, to what extent?
So what does that mean here in Massachusetts? What's your role in this?
We don't have
right?
a role.
I mean, so I mean, do you feel that we're going to see more ICE raids here in Massachusetts?
That's really up to the federal government.
Okay.
It's just like everyone keeps saying, what's the focus of the budget coming up next year? I could sit and say, well, this is our focus, but he's talking about making major reforms to the Affordable Care Act. If they make 1 or 2 major reforms to that, that can throw our whole focus of the budget next year, what we're trying to do, into a tailspin.
Right. It's like you read my mind. I'm going to ask you that in just a moment.
And frankly, I mean, whatever is happening now at the national level has incredible state Massachusetts impact, because what happens with education, we're concerned about that tremendously. We've gotten charter schools off the
Well, we
screen,
think
right?
we have.
We think because we voted against
Right,
it.
yeah, but
we don't know.
But we don't know what the
Exactly.
federal issues are going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, this has enormous impact for us. And this makes the role of the state even more important, because in so many ways, we're going to have to try to make up for some of the things that are happening at the national level.
All right, coming up, we'll have a few minutes left. I do want to ask you, I know that you just said, well, you don't know, you can't say exactly where the budget is going, but I am curious what your priorities would be for the budget. That budget process, I think most people know, is beginning now, and then will play out over the next several months. We'll get a quick preview coming up on the Hank Stolz Experience.
Did he ever return? No, he never returned, and his fate is still unlearned.
What a pity.
He may
Are you or someone you know struggling to keep your home warm? Worcester Community Action Council may be able to help. Money through the federally funded Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, commonly known as Fuel Assistance, are now available to help pay home heating bills. Whether you rent or own or heat by oil, gas, electric, wood, or any other heating source, assistance is based on the number of people living in your household and their combined income. A single household making up to $34,000 a year may be eligible. A family of 4 can be making as much as $65,000 and be eligible. Visit WCAC.net today.
I absolutely loved every minute of playing high school sports, and just the feeling of going into the locker room before a game, and how cool it was coming out and the whole town's all around the field cheering, and it's just such a special feeling.
Played basketball and golf at Auburn High. I was the captain of both teams my senior year. For me, I learned a lot because I played high school sports when I was at Auburn High School.
I started back in March of 1997, and it was a lot different then. I was the only person in sports. We were shooting on VHS tapes.
I started in December of 2000. I was the assignment desk editor and the Health Watch reporter. I was also always a sports guy. You get paid to do things that you love to do, and for us, that's being on a ball field or a basketball court or just being around sports.
Our enthusiasm, I think, for sports is contagious, and everyone gets swept up in it. It shows in, I think, in our overall product in our sports, that everyone cares.
You can't get Worcester weather from a Boston TV station. The sun could be shining in downtown Boston, but the weather could be very different here in Worcester. People tell me all the time how much they count on our weather forecast, and we know how important that is to our Worcester News Tonight viewers. Each weekday, we'll give you your weather, your 10-day forecast for right here in Worcester, only on Worcester News Tonight.
Worcester's only local forecast, weeknights on Worcester News Tonight.
So I do want to get to the budget, and I understand. So there's, as you have now pointed out, there's a lot happening on a national level that will affect what is happening on the budget. But we are in the early stages of putting together the budget, Senator Moore, and so what do you do? What do you do then? Do you just go and you say, well, we can't really do much, or you must be doing something?
Well, right now, Ways and Means and the chair is going to start meeting with all the senators and trying to get their budget priorities. And as I think we've stated over the years, I don't know of anyone that goes in that's not prioritizing local aid, which is Chapter 70 or the UGG, General Restricted Government Aid. Those are usually the number 1 and 2 issues that everyone's trying to fight for. And then there's we all advocate for various local projects that we try to get in the budget. Then there's other prioritization. Like where I chair higher education, I go and I fight for a lot for higher education initiatives. You know, Senator Chandler may have another. I think she's been very supportive of oral health or those types of programs. So everyone has their own thing that's going on.
Right. So the health is now that's probably
would like to
huge,
talk about
right? I mean,
that,
oh,
yes.
yeah. I mean, right.
So leading it for you.
Yeah.
Even though we're feuding on the bill.
You tee them up, you can knock them out of the park. But Obamacare, then obviously,
is going to
what
be
is going to be repealed or what is not, or how that's going to work.
No one has ever said it was perfect.
Yeah.
But to repeal it without any idea of what you're going to put in its place is insanity. Most people in Massachusetts would say, repair it, don't repeal it. Instead of talking about trying to replace it with something that we don't know about, which is what they've always done all through the campaign. They're going to replace it with something, but they'll let you know later on. We can't afford that because we're going to have to pick this up. And that will become a very expensive prerogative. So that will be a #1 prerogative for me. A second thing that I'm very concerned about is education. I can't begin to tell you how I feel about our new Secretary of Education, who has absolutely no credentials in public education, the one area that she's tasked to be responsible for. I'm very worried about it. We're short now in education. We want to make sure that we have enough and that it doesn't go to charter schools, that it goes to public education. So we're going to have to watch that very carefully. And I guess the third thing I'm concerned about is housing. We can't have economic development here until we start providing more housing for working families. Unless people have a place to live, they're not going to come to Massachusetts. They're not going to stay in Massachusetts. So those are my 3 prerogatives. And I don't see any help coming from the federal level that we can count on.
Yeah. There's one thing I am working on with the Secretary of Education, Mass Secretary of Education on. It's called Early College High Schools, and it's actually looking at our high schools and establishing a pilot program. We haven't determined the amount of students that we want, but it's going to be a significant amount of money. But it's actually bringing college courses into the high schools so that students can graduate high school with possibly from 15 to an associate's degree. But it's allowing the students to get in there, having access, and students that might not think that they can even go to college, let them get in there. We would cover the state would initially cover the cost of the pilot program to try to you know, other countries over in Europe actually, when students graduate, they're on a career track. We don't have that here, so it's a way of trying to bring more of the business community or the experiences they're going to have in college into the high schools and actually increase accessibility, and actually it's also going to help reduce some student loan debt. So it's something we're pushing in the budget.
Before we wrap up, fiscal health of Massachusetts today, pretty well. We're running behind.
I think we're a little bit behind, but not a lot. I think what we were concerned about was that the governor prematurely made those 9C cuts. Prematurely, as the months went on, the next couple of months, the revenues were better.
Similar to last year.
Yeah.
Same thing happened. We had a shortfall, and by the end of the year we had a surplus. So the one thing I will say, just going back to the national scene, I really think, in my opinion, I can be all wrong on this. I actually think the immigration executive order that he did, and I think he's going to do this with the health care. I think the repeal and replace is going to be review, make minor changes, rename it, and then call it Trump Care or something else. I think he's going to do that in the immigration too. If this had gone into play, I don't think he really knows the full extent of the vetting that's done. And then after the period's over, he would come back with some minor changes, or just come back and say, look, I honored my campaign promise, and these are the changes, and try to take more credit than what was due.
Yeah, very interesting. Hey, great show. Thank you both for coming, spending the entire half hour with us. We really appreciate it and bringing us up to date on some very important issues. We'll do it again soon, and thank you for joining us right here on the Hank Stolz Experience.